The room had just quieted after the toast when the laughter rose sharp and collective, like it had permission now. Jonah grinned, one hand around his champagne glass, the other brushing a speck of nothing off his tailored lapel. His bride leaned into him, whispered something that made his grin wider, and I sat there in the last row next to a server's cart and a flickering votive candle no one had relit. I hadn't expected a speech. I certainly hadn't expected to be the punchline of it. My mother-in-law paid for everything my mom didn't even buy a flower. That's what he said. Not quietly, not offhand. Into the microphone. In front of 200 people, half of whom didn't know my name. The other half likely forgot it. I kept my expression calm. I've always been good at that. Years of client meetings, awkward pitches, budget disputes. The trick is to breathe through your nose and keep your jaw loose. I sipped water, while the bride's mother received a standing ovation for the decorations, the cake, the lighting. Things I had quietly paid for through a trust Jonah never asked about. My name wasn't in the program. My seat had no ribbon. I wasn't introduced to the officiant. A waiter mistook me for someone's assistant. After the cake was served, I slipped out before the first dance. Back at the hotel, I changed into my robe and sat on the bed. No tears. Not yet. Just that hollow hum that comes when disappointment stretches itself too thin to name. I opened the folder I had carried down from Richmond real estate transfer business, shares a letter I never signed. They were supposed to be his. Not for attention, not for praise. Just because I loved him. I placed the envelope in the drawer beside the bed and turned off the lamp. I didn't set an alarm. In the morning, I would call Geraldine. I was the first to arrive at the ceremony. I always am, early, quiet, unnoticed. The ushers smiled politely and pointed to the back. Not the row for family. Not even the second or third. Just near enough to see the side of Jonah's head when he stood at the altar, and far enough that the photographer didn't bother to angle in my direction. Martin would have hated this. He was the one who used to whisper jokes to Jonah during long services, the one who said things like, weddings should have music, not microphones. He died just after Jonah turned 14. Heart stopped on a cold Tuesday morning. By evening, I was a widow with a mortgage and a boy who wouldn't speak for days. I rebuilt slowly. Took freelance design work, waited tables at night, sketched floor plans in the margins of unpaid bills. And eventually, somehow, I was running 3 offices, signing payroll dressing in linen blazers with my initials embroidered in the lining. When Jonah got into Columbia Law, I didn't hesitate. I sold the house. Told him I was downsizing. He never questioned it. He never asked how I managed. And I never told him that I cried for an hour in the driveway the day I gave the keys to a stranger. Then he met Annalise. She was polite at first. Shiny hair, clipped voice precise. When I offered biscuits the first time they visited, she tilted her head and smiled like I'd handed her a cigarette. "We're avoiding wheat," she said, touching Jonah's hand, like I might poison him. At the wedding, her family sat up front. Coordinated outfits. Matching corsages. They took pictures before the ceremony even started snapping away, like they'd already claimed the day. I sat near the restroom doors holding the only thing I brought, a photo album Jonah made in 3rd grade. Construction paper stick figures me and Mom in uneven letters. He never opened it. He walked past me 3 times that night and never looked down. He never saw what I held in my lap as I watched the lights dim and the music start. The sky was still gray when I stepped out, the kind of overcast that suited the weight in my chest. I walked slowly past the hotel awning across 2 silent blocks until the river came into view. I bought a black coffee from a cart I used to visit when Jonah was in undergrad nearby. Back then, he liked cinnamon. He used to sneak a second cup for me and pretend he paid. The cup warmed my hands, but not much else. My phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a stack of missed calls. 27. All from Jonah. A part of me thought maybe he was worried. Maybe he regretted it. But then I remembered the sound of his voice in that microphone, the careless smile, and the clinking of glasses that followed. It wasn't a mistake. It was a performance. I didn't call him back. Instead, I opened my contacts and found Geraldine's name. I hadn't spoken to her in months, but her voice was steady as ever when she picked up. Delia. I'm activating the transfer clause, I said. A pause. You sure? I stared at the slow-moving water below the bridge. I was holding it for him. He said I didn't give him anything. Geraldine didn't argue. She never did when it came to things that mattered. I'll have the documents to your inbox within the hour. I thanked her and ended the call. Next was my lawyer. The apartment title still bore my name clean, untouched. I asked him to list it for sale, no delays. Monday morning, I said, no later. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I'd built my whole life on being prepared for the things no one saw coming. And now I saw clearly. They thought I was done giving. That I had nothing left, but I hadn't even started taking back. I walked the long way back to the hotel. The coffee had gone cold in my hand, but I didn't mind. There were still other papers to review before I drove home. I found the envelope tucked between two bulkier folders, thin cream-colored, the kind I used to send thank you notes in. My estate planner had mailed it without comment, but I knew exactly what was inside. I had asked for the full breakdown months ago, just in case anything went wrong. It was all there, the venue deposit non-refundable, the catering balance paid in full, the floral contract 12 pages long detailing everything from table arrangements to corsages for the bridal party. Every expense was covered by the trust I had created after Martin died. It was meant for Jonah's future. At the time, I thought a wedding qualified. I had instructed the payments to be processed discreetly. Anonymous line items. I didn't want them feeling indebted or obligated to make speeches or include my name on a plaque. I thought discretion would leave space for gratitude, or at least kindness. Now I flipped to the index page. Under beneficiary, it read, Jonah Marsh. Under point of contact, it read, Annalise Brenner. Her mother. Her mother had taken every call, chosen every flower, signed off on every invoice, and somehow that translated to ownership. I kept flipping through the stapled sheets until I found the last page. The signature block stared up at me. Delia Marsh. My name in black ink. Clear and centered. Not a ghost. Not a myth. It wasn't that I wanted credit. Not really. But I had wanted to matter. Even quietly. Even in the background. I thought I had stitched myself into the fabric of the day, even if no one saw the thread. But they'd pulled it out and rewrote the pattern like I was never there at all. I slid the envelope back into its folder and pressed it flat beneath my palm. Then I opened my laptop and found the email from the real estate agent. I confirmed the open house date. He replied within minutes, Sunday at noon. I closed the screen and went to make tea. The water hadn't yet boiled, but I already knew which drawer I'd empty next. I hadn't been back inside since the last set of blinds were installed. That was nearly 6 months ago. The moment I opened the door, I caught that faint scent of fresh varnish and untouched air. Sunlight stretched across the hardwood like it had been waiting for anyone to notice. It was a beautiful space. 2 bedrooms, warm lighting, walking distance to the courthouse. I'd chosen everything myself, down to the glass cabinet pulls and the textured linens folded neatly in the hall closet. Every piece had been placed with Jonah and Annalise in mind. This was supposed to be the next chapter. I quietly handed them, already written, already ready. The agent walked in a step behind me, clipboard in hand. He looked around, admiring the clean lines and soft finishes. You sure about selling? He asked. Don't want to keep it in the family. I paused, then passed him the key. It's not mine to keep anymore. And not theirs to inherit. He didn't ask another question. While he measured and noted the staging details, I walked through the rooms slowly. My reflection moved across the oven door in the kitchen. The guest room still held a wrapped quilt in the closet, something I had stitched the winter before last in the quiet months when I still believed they might ask to visit more often. I didn't take it. Back at home, I opened the storage unit behind the garage. Dust hovered over plastic bins labeled in my handwriting. Old client files, early renderings, archived design catalogs. And a second box. Jonah's internship packets, the sample pitch decks I created for him when he first mentioned he might want to learn the business. He never followed up. I packed the contents neatly into contractor bags and set them by the garage door. Then I changed the lock on the unit and dropped the key in the trash. I stood there for a moment, hand still on the doorknob, before turning off the light. The next morning, the first appointment at the apartment came 15 minutes early. The call came in just after 8. I almost didn't answer, but the number blinked on the screen long enough for instinct to override hesitation. Mom. His voice was tense, clipped at the edges like he'd rehearsed it too many times. Why are there people at the apartment? With measuring tape, did you sell it? I let the question hang. Then I said softly, I was going to give it to you, but I'm told I didn't even bring a flower. Silence. Then the kind of stumbling I hadn't heard from him since he was a teenager, caught cheating on a chemistry test. Mom, I didn't mean it like that. It was God. It was just a joke. You know, everyone was laughing. I didn't think you'd take it personally. I could hear traffic behind him. A horn. Maybe footsteps. Maybe he was pacing, trying to find the right combination of words that would make me fold like I used to. But I didn't fold this time. I've left a letter for you, I said. With my lawyer, you can pick it up when you're ready. Another pause. He didn't ask what it said. Just let out a frustrated breath and mumbled something about needing to get back to work. The call ended without a goodbye. The letter was already sealed. It wasn't long, 4 pages printed cleanly. The first page was a simple list: deposits, trust disbursements, tuition checks, the itemized cost of every vendor at the wedding. The second listed the apartment's appraisal and the buyout clause I had triggered for the company shares. The third was a scanned note from Martin's will naming Jonah as the reason we kept trying. And the fourth page was a photo printed in black and white, me in the hospital chair, 19 hours after delivery, holding Jonah in a flannel blanket, eyes swollen, hair a mess, smiling anyway. There was no explanation written under it. None was needed. Later that afternoon, the lawyer called to confirm receipt. I didn't ask if Jonah cried. Instead, I folded laundry and made space in the drawer where the album used to be. The email came first, addressed, formally signed by Annalise's father. I could almost hear the hesitation in his phrasing, even through the screen. There's been a misunderstanding, he wrote. We're sure emotions were high and everyone's intentions have been misread. He asked if I might be willing to discuss things over lunch. He included a phone number I didn't save. A few days later, a screenshot landed in my inbox, forwarded by a former colleague. It was from Annalise's social media. A photo of her and Jonah smiling on a city rooftop, champagne in hand, captioned, "Love means building together without strings attached." The comments were full of hearts and hashtags. Justice. No drama. I didn't reply to the email. I didn't comment on the post. The real power in silence is that people don't see it until it moves beneath them. I'd never yelled, never accused, never gone public. And yet, everything shifted. My lawyer confirmed the closing documents. The apartment now belonged to a young couple from Denver. Newly married, first-time buyers. They sent a thank you note even though they didn't know who I was. My remaining shares in the company, sold quietly to a direct competitor Geraldine had introduced me to years ago. A firm younger, sharper, and more ambitious than Jonah had ever bothered to notice. He would learn soon enough. The industry always circles back. I took the proceeds and wrote a single check to my alma mater's design program. I kept the memo line simple, in memory of the things I built. No name attached, just mine at the bottom in steady ink. That night I made dinner for one, as I always did. I lit the small candle by the window and turned off my phone. The city outside buzzed on without me, but the quiet in my kitchen felt earned. I washed the dishes, dried my hands, and walked to the hallway closet. There was still one box left untouched since spring. The days settled into a gentler shape once the paperwork was done. I woke later than I used to, letting the morning light ease its way across the kitchen floor before making breakfast. I brewed coffee without rushing, tended to the small garden behind the house, and spent long afternoons sketching whatever came to mind: an old chair, the shadow of a tree, the curve of my own hand when it rested. A month passed like that, then another. Jonah didn't call again. I didn't expect him to. The silence between us had grown so thick over the years that the wedding only illuminated what had already hardened. No flowers arrived, no messages, no attempts from Annalise's family either. The world they built didn't leave space for me, and I finally stopped trying to fit into rooms that had long since restructured themselves. I found a rhythm in the stillness. Some days were heavier than others, but there was relief in knowing I didn't have to brace for the next slight, the next obligation disguised as gratitude. The quiet felt clean. One evening, returning from the garden with dirt still under my nails, I noticed a small package leaning against the front door. No return address. Just my name written in quick strokes on the paper. I carried it inside and sat at the dining table before opening it. The tape peeled away easily. Inside was the photo album I'd brought to the wedding, the one Jonah never touched. The album looked the same as it had that night, but when I lifted it, I saw one corner of the cover was warped, water-stained, as if a tear had fallen there and rested long enough to leave a mark. No note, no explanation. Just the book returned to me with the quiet weight of something reconsidered too late. I closed it gently and placed it on the shelf beside the old design books I rarely opened anymore. The house felt still, but not empty. I washed my hands, poured a glass of water, and sat down at my drafting table, letting the pencil move without thinking. Outside, another quiet evening unfolded, and I turned the page. The shelter wasn't far, just a 15-minute drive on familiar roads. I'd passed it for years, always meaning to stop to ask if they needed help organizing storage or freshening up the intake rooms. I finally walked through the front door one Tuesday morning and left with a clipboard full of schedules and a room full of young women waiting to learn how to turn chaos into calm. We didn't talk much about design at first. I showed them how to read light through a window, how to find warmth in secondhand textures, how to sketch a room that felt like a promise. They picked it up quickly, their hunger disguised as curiosity. I never mentioned Jonah. They never asked. Most days I was just Miss D, the older lady with the steady hands and the quiet voice. But one afternoon, while we painted salvaged cabinet doors and played old records through someone's speaker, a girl with lavender braids and an oversized hoodie turned to me and asked, "You ever have kids?" Her question was simple. So was my answer. I did. That was all. She nodded, like that was enough. When I got home that evening, I walked to the edge of my garden. I'd cleared a new row by the fence the week before, rich soil ready. I planted a single flower, not part of a design, not arranged or curated. Just one stem pressed into the dirt with bare hands. The next week I planted another, then another. No bouquets, no symmetry. Just one bloom at a time. They took root slowly and sometimes not at all. But a few began to stretch toward the sun, unsure but determined. Back inside, I made tea and watched through the kitchen window as the light shifted across the soil. I didn't name the flowers. I didn't measure their height. They were enough simply for growing. The next morning, I received a small delivery no return name. Just a single potted plant on my doorstep, with one leaf curled like it had waited too long to be noticed. 6 months had passed, though time had stopped measuring itself in weeks for me. The seasons shifted softly now, more in the way light settled on the floor than how calendars flipped. I had just watered the garden when I saw it. A small terracotta pot sat quietly against my front door. Nestled beside it was a folded piece of paper weighted down with a smooth riverstone. I didn't recognize the handwriting at first, just that it was rushed a little uneven. I opened it slowly. I was wrong. You gave me everything. I just never learned how to say thank you. No name, no return address. But I didn't need either. The plant was small, still new, its stem a little fragile, but the roots were packed firm. I brought it inside without hesitation and placed it on the windowsill beside the others, the ones I'd chosen planted and watched bloom over the months. I didn't move anything else to make space. It fit on its own. I didn't call him. I didn't write back. I didn't start again. Not all wounds close with apologies, but they don't stay open forever. I didn't need a stage, or a mic, or a crowd to witness what I'd kept whole despite it all. I had my name stitched quietly into places no one could uproot. Just a quiet room, and a flower I chose for myself.